fall Monday afternoon. Not how we should start the week, but if there's any upside to it, is we do get to talk about the budget, which is probably why people are still probably parking and coming in to join for the conversation. They're probably just not here yet. But it's probably the most important part of our jobs. And I appreciate seeing all the staff here and everything you've done leading up to this. So with that, I'll call to order the special meeting of the Frisco Town Council. May I have the roll call, please? Here. Here.
Fallon.
Here.
Incan, absent. Sherburne, absent. Burley, absent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What you see is what you get today. But yeah, with that, again, I appreciate everyone's time and effort into this. It's, I know, a difficult task and not always the most enjoyable parts of our job, but we need to do it. And with that, I'll turn it over to Tony. Are you kicking it off, or is Bonnie just gonna?
Very quickly, I just want to recognize the staff, Bonnie in particular, for putting this budget together. As you know, I've only been here a little over a month, so clearly my fingerprints aren't significantly on this document, but if they were, it'd be pretty consistent, because I think the budget is a reflection of your strategic priorities. That's what the budget should be. It aligns with the core 5 priorities you've established in the 2020 strategic plan. The overall budget's at 39.9 million, which is a significant increase over 2020, 34%. Most of that is related to capital. You deferred capital last year, which was a right decision because of COVID and the unanticipated nature of what was going to happen. So a lot of projects are being rolled back into this year's budget. So of the total budget, 42% of it is capital. And that in of itself is unusual, but that's a reflection of basically you're doing 2 years with a capital in one. So to that end, I'm going to turn it over to Bonnie and kind of walk you through these policy questions.
Thank you. Appreciate that. First thing I'd like you to look at, just like we did on the council one-on-ones. And by the way, if there's anyone back there, I do have some extra copies of these documents. If you'd like to come up and get a copy, I didn't make enough for everybody, obviously, but I do have some up here if you'd like to do that. So this worksheet that you have seen in the past is a summary of all of the funds. You've seen this, and this tells you that at the end of 2022, we anticipate the ending fund balance to be 23 million. You'll see that on the far right-hand side. And then just to look through on the bottom line, the fund balance is there. You can see the general fund is 7.6 million. The capital fund is 7.1 million, and on down the line. I won't go through all of those. And the bottom number there is the percentage of the total fund balance. Tony had asked me to get a number for you, and I misunderstood what he was asking for. But I will tell you that that 7.67 million in the general fund is our required reserve of 57%. That number is not based on the current year expenditures. It's based on an actual year, which would be 2020. So whatever the expenditures were then, we take 57% of that, and that's what we're required to keep. That number also, the capital fund, I'll refer you to the next column, the capital fund. You'll see that we transferred in the beginning fund balance on January 1st. That's 16 million at the bottom there. The second line from the bottom is 16 million. That includes the 7 million economic or the budget stabilization reserve that we had in the general fund during COVID. And that has been transferred back, or will be by the end of the year. If you so desire, it'll be transferred back into the capital improvement fund. I have not had an opportunity to talk to Thad. We may need a resolution to be able to do that, or certainly council approval. It hasn't been done yet, but I'm assuming that you would want that to be done. So that's why that number is so large. And then you'll also see in the capital fund that there is a transfer in of 928,000. And that's the excess that's left over in the general fund after we have that 7-month, 57% reserve. So there's another 900,000 that's going into the capital fund. So all of our funds are in good shape. since the last time you saw this, we have adjusted the Marina Fund. So on the right-hand side, you will see the Marina Fund, and we do have a positive fund balance in there of 230,000, which isn't a lot, but better than the negative number we had.
And to achieve that, the biggest expense item was 1.5 million for the landscape. We simply phased that into 2 years. And we lowered the, what I'll call the Dock Island solution from 500,000 to 100,000. We don't need a second access point to Dock Island. We're gonna be proposing to you in about a month, not having a Dock Island in the future, and we'll discuss that with you further, but that saves a lot of money.
Do you have any questions on that particular document? If not, I also gave you a copy for today, a list of all of the capital projects, and they're separated out by fund. That hopefully, the previous sheet, that's the goal anyway, to have the numbers be the same. I won't spend any time on that. I would like to go directly to the policy questions, so if you could take a look at those. And Tony, did you want to start?
Yeah.
We're gonna switch.
Can you just, I guess it's more of a Tony question. Can you just confirm, I mean, doing double the capital projects in a year is awesome, but it takes a lot of time to execute those projects. Is it realistic to expect staff to be able to take the time to purchase the products, execute the construction, do what we're asking them to do?
Of the amount of funds, which is almost 19 million, more than half is just 2 projects. One is Slopeside, which is well underway, and the other one is at your discretion, the CDOT project. So we can talk about that further, but everything else is clearly doable. And to that end, I'll go into one of the projects we hadn't got the information for, and we got feedback from you, and we concur with you. We would like to go green sooner than later when it comes to our vehicle purchases. We had a number of pickup trucks that were scheduled to be purchased this year that are traditional gas. To that end, Jeff has laid out, and Jeff's not here, unfortunately, because today is his 29th anniversary. And in lieu of a divorce, I'm filling in for him.
He is online right now.
Yeah.
We need him. We
So
have
he laid
Jeff.
out some really good options. The first option is currently in the budget. That is electric trucks are coming out for the first time by Ford this year. So we thought we'd use the first one that we could purchase out of the PRA. That would be a good test. Jeff's a little nervous about buying more than one, given its first year. So I would concur with him. So what would it cost then in the future? Let's say next year, we can start buying electric vehicles for public works. Electric infrastructure is between $120,000 to $150,000 to have the facility there to recharge multiple trucks at public works. His third option was the infrastructure plus buying 3 trucks this year, but they indicated, I think Jeff is correct, that'd be a little bit risky. Let's find out that these trucks work well in this environment with the workload we put toward them. And then we're better prepared to know what to expect next year. So his fourth option really, I think, is the optimal option where we would spend roughly $100,000 on the one truck plus special tools and training for our mechanics. Now you could proceed this year if you wanted to and make the investment for the infrastructure, not additional trucks, but just, the infrastructure. And so that would run at roughly another 120 to, what do you say here? $120,000, $150,000. So we buy the truck this year, which I think is a good move to test it. We properly train our people to take care of these trucks this year. Then the question is, do you want to invest in the infrastructure to allow for us to buy trucks next year, this year, or do you want to wait till next year? You have some discretion. We made some significant cuts after reviewing the budget with you. So clearly there is the ability to pay for infrastructure this year. And then we'll definitely be in the game this time next year when it comes to electric vehicles. No, the mayor had also brought up the police vehicle. That is going to be a hybrid vehicle. We've been purchasing hybrid vehicles for police departments, so there'll be no change there. We'd like to find out if in the future, I'm not aware of a current police package electric, but I would guarantee you that probably within a year, one's coming out. I'd love to test it. So eventually, we can phase our whole fleet into electric over the next 3 to 4 to 5 years based upon the current age and condition of our rolling stock. Any questions on that?
We have not budgeted this 120, 150 to
No.
build the infrastructure.
We did not. We just got the numbers on Friday, so I apologize for that. We just got those numbers, what it would cost. So you could do that in this year's budget or wait till next year. I think one advantage, if you did it this year, we would have it in place. So when we did order trucks next year, it's plug and play. We're ready to go. There's no delay.
Is that, pardon my ignorance on electric charging infrastructure, are those translatable to other vehicles or are they proprietary to that Ford vehicle? So
They should,
they all, because I don't have an electric vehicle, sorry, apologize. But is that,
our intent is to make sure they're generic. For example, they're not just designed for Tesla, but they're designed, like you see some charging stations at the county. We have some charging stations, they're quote generic, and that would be our intent.
does that lock us in? I'm just saying, does that lock us in Ford trucks? Or does that lock?
We'll have to check into that, because we'll check with GM in particular, because I know they're going down this route.
That- I know they're trying to, outside of Tesla right now, what I've heard is they're trying to have an industry standardization of plug.
Yeah, yeah, just like a gas pump.
If you have questions for the staff, can the staff come up to the dais so that I can hear them?
That's
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you for the
Thanks, sorry about
catching.
that.
No, that's right. I just, because I know Jeff is on and I do have a quick question for Jeff and I then want to be able to kick him loose for.
No,
Jeff, thanks for
Mr.
joining.
Mayor, that's fine. I'm here, whatever you need.
No, you got to put family first, sir, but I appreciate you being, looks like you're in the garage and that's awesome. I just had,
Yeah,
putting in that infrastructure specifically for charging stations at Public Works. I know we've talked about it when we did some of the remodel and everything else, but how impactful will that be to your operations there? And what does that look like kind of for setting it up?
well, to be honest with you, I think we've got enough room out there. And Addis and I spoke about this when we were looking into this and we can put the electric charging stations in the paved area right now that's out in front of the building. That's the closest access to the electricity we need and the connections that we need. And then employees can park back in the dirt parking lot where all of the fleet is parked now. So in reality, it won't have that much of an effect. It's not going to be that big of a ditch. It's not going to be that big of an excavation area. So we'll still have pretty much, I don't know, 70% use of that front parking lot while the construction was going on.
Council, any other questions for Jeff while we have him?
Jeff, is most of that expense what I'd call traditional construction as opposed to some element of technology that if we wait, the price is going to go way down? Because it's evolving.
No, that's
technology.
just strictly electrical infrastructure. Those are pretty much fixed costs that go up maybe a little bit every year. And in those numbers, I did put in a inflation rate of 10% so that we'd be a little more comfortable. But that's like transformer, conduit, wire, panels, things like that. It's not necessarily waiting for technology. Electricity is the technology that it is. So, but the charging stations, that would be something that maybe the price would go down over time, or there's probably, I'm sure, grant opportunities out there for that we can look into when the time comes, just like we have with the charging stations at the PRA, the Marina, and Third and Granite. So there are opportunities to reduce that cost through grants, but that's pretty much a fixed cost for electrical infrastructure.
Hey, Jeff, question. I'm going to follow up with, a question Andrew asked a little while ago in terms of this budget tasks Public Works very mightily, and always been impressed with your ability of you and your staff to execute, these kind of manifestos at such a high level. how are you doing with staff? And when you look at this, do you have an internal prioritization where whereby you just might not get to some of this, right? Or do you see it's all in here because it's all in your wheelhouse? Just want to kind of hear from you, your degree of confidence. I mean, I flipped through this and see the amount of public works tasking. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, Councilmember Fallon, thank you for asking that question. Actually, I truly believe, and I think Addison would echo my comments, that the level of professionalism that we have in the Public Works team, we can make your goals happen. That's what we're here for. That's what we do. Along to day-to-day stuff, we'll take care of that too. But the projects on there really don't compete with the projects that we're dealing with right now, to be quite honest with you. So if we can handle the projects that we're doing at the marina and at the well houses and the water plant and the intake structure, I see no issue with being able to get these projects done. Things take time, but I think we can get it done. I have a high level of confidence that the Public Works staff and your crew can get this done.
Jeff, thanks. That's one way to instilling confidence, which we have in the buckets, for you guys. But thanks for taking it on.
Yes, sir.
We're going to go through policy questions, X, Bonnie, or how did you want to approach?
On that, how much, what was your decision on this?
Oh, that's probably a good question, isn't it?
Minimum is $100,000
Mhm.
just for the vehicle and the training of the staff. If you
Mhm.
want to invest another 120, 150 to create the infrastructure this year versus next year. That's really good.
I like the idea of buying one vehicle, building the infrastructure, having it be imminently expandable as we continue to go electric.
Yeah, even this truck isn't exactly like that.
I personally would still push for, holding off, but I think because there isn't a guaranteed timeline on receiving of those trucks and we need access to them. I think if it's, I trust in the testing of that whole vehicle and everything else, but I'd prefer, because, once we purchase replacement gas engines, those gas engines will be with us for 20 more years in one way or another, versus if we start pushing getting the electrification of our fleet. But I don't know, because we don't have a guaranteed timeline. I have reservations in stretching what we do have, given the age and the use, but I think putting the infrastructure in, I'd push for 2 trucks. I think I trust the technology. I think it's going to be great. I think we could just prioritize getting rid of whichever one has the most miles on it or is in the worst shape. And
If we buy 1 or 2, we're not replacing the other ones with gas vehicles, are we? We're just put a little more bubble gum and duct tape in the budget.
PRA, you got 3 public works pickup trucks. It's the mayor proposal, we would replace one of those 3 with electric. So we just expand our experiment a little bit more. I
Hold
think
on.
that's prudent.
Now you got me confused.
so there's, if you look on the,
Right.
we're buying 1 new truck that we've identified for all the right reasons.
Mhm.
The Ford Lightning, the F-150, and then we have 3 replacement trucks for Public Works.
And we're still gonna buy replacement gas trucks
Yeah, because we're
next
gonna,
year?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah, that's where I would say,
I would, can we,
or can we milk these for another year? But I don't know the shape they're in, or is that a,
Jeff would be the best expert on that.
Oh,
He's
you're muted, Jeff.
familiar with the 3 vehicles.
Jeff, can you say that again? You were muted.
Still muted,
And we were-
Jeff. We'll try to ask you to unmute.
Oh, there we go. I got
There
it.
it is.
I understand what you're saying, and I think that's why option 4 or a slight alternative to that would be best, because that's actually delaying the replacement of the 3 trucks this year, or I'm sorry, 2022 altogether, not buying any gas vehicles at all, just leaving those 3 trucks that we were going to replace in the fleet for another year. And then And then in 2023, after we get this test, because, Mayor, I agree with you, the technology is good, but, I'm just not sure in the cold weather and parking outside up here and all of that. I would really like to go through a year of making sure that this light pickup truck can handle what we're trying to do in Public Works. It'll be fine for PRA, but Public Works applications is a little bit more heavy duty, if you will. So I want to make sure we can do that. So option 4 is the plan of going ahead and getting that one truck for the PRA and the charging station, testing it for a year. And then we purchase the tools and get the training for the mechanics so that they're ready to work on this, not only the PRA truck, but the future ones. And then in 2023, let's install the infrastructure, buy 6 electric vehicles, if it all works out, and go from there. I think that's the biggest bang for the buck, while still being safe and making sure we fully understand that these vehicles are going to work for our application.
Just use them for another year. So we actually save money.
Jeff, so how much money, so we're not spending that 123. What would you need? You need that 123 plus how much?
150.
Bonnie, was that for me?
Yes. So we're not purchasing those vehicles.
Right.
And that's 123,000 that we're not spending.
Right, but he's saying wait on the infrastructure till 2023 is what he just said.
Right.
Right? So Jeff, is there, should we really wait for the infrastructure? Shouldn't we actually at least, put
I'm
in
sorry, I
some-
can't hear you.
Some basic infrastructure that, as Andy was talking about, we could add on to, however many stalls or whatever. And then just another thing, Jeff, that like, you say it's gonna be easy use at the PRA, like, why not put that electric vehicle to use? I'm sorry, what's that?
Speaking to your microphone, he's having a hard time hearing you.
Sorry, it's the mask, I'm pretty loud as it is. And why wouldn't you use the electric vehicle for actually Public Works and put it to the test and try to break it instead of just like, bounce around the PRA and it can do that anyway, right? So I'm good with that. The other question was that 120, should we put it into the infrastructure on the sooner side?
I'm with Jeff. Just, we're going to basically, we're running a one truck test for a year. And if it passes, then we put in the infrastructure and go full bore. But it doesn't, I don't think it does make sense to put in the infrastructure until we're sure we're going to convert our fleet to electric.
Yeah, one other,
Go ahead, Jeff.
We're working on it.
one other thing to keep in mind, and I know that this is really in the weeds, but there is no state bid for electric vehicles right now. That's why, they're going to cost a little bit more right now. And hopefully in the next year or two, they will be available on state bid, because that's how we buy all of our vehicles is on state bid. And that's why we get them for so cheap, if you will, compared to what you can get them just going to the dealership. But right now they're not available state bid, but we're hoping that they will be in the next 1 to 2 years.
So just to clarify, so we're gonna, yes, on the one new electric truck for the PRA, no on the replacement of the other 3 for now. And then that was hold off on the infrastructure at Public Works.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we need, and I'm sorry if I missed it, do we need to install infrastructure additional infrastructure at the PRA, or are we going to utilize the existing?
No, the existing electric service on that building will handle one of those basic, that we're gonna get, that you put in your garage for an electric car.
Perfect.
So that's what that'll be out there for now. And then also, Mr. Mayor, don't forget the tools and the mechanic training
Yep.
in 2022 for that purpose as well.
Count-
20 to 25,000, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes, Bonnie.
Does that sound-
Net savings of 100,000.
Yes.
Does that sound good, council? You guys
Yeah, that's
good with
good.
that? All right. Sorry, not having that written out, that got a little confusing.
Yeah, we
So
apologize for the last minute, but it was hard to get all the necessary information during the normal budget period. I agree,
And thank you for clarifying, Mr. Mayor.
yeah.
Appreciate that. Would you like to?
Thank you.
counsel-
thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank
and
you.
happy anniversary.
Yeah,
Would you like to, Mr. Mayor, start at the beginning, or would you like to continue with the vehicles and the replacement that that's on page 14 of that policy question of this document that I printed out for you?
we just want to start from the beginning. Confusing.
Yeah, let's go page by page. Yeah, thank you, Bonnie. Got confusing enough there for a second, so.
Policy question number one, typically and this year as well, has to do with salary adjustments. We have done we are in the process of doing a salary survey, a compensation study, which is not yet complete. So this is a little bit of a plug number. Don't know how much those adjustments might be, but this 500,000 includes that adjustment to individuals that need their salaries adjusted based on that study. And also a performance merit of up to 5%, which is similar to what the other entities are doing throughout the county. And we have consensus back here.
Yeah, yeah.
And stomach growling.
Question number one, you guys, any discussion, concerns? Yeah. I mean, I feel,
That turnover rate's about twice what a normal government organization should be experiencing. And clearly that reflection of COVID and housing costs, and hopefully we are competitive from a marketplace standpoint on compensation, but we're going to learn very soon from our consultant. So one hasn't really been comprehensively done since 2006, so I'm a little nervous.
yeah, curious to see that. I think sadly, I think we're getting outpaced by the cost of living, but for now, I think we got to take care of our employees.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll be in too bad shape because while we haven't done an outside survey,
Mhm.
we've certainly done internal.
Internal.
ones. And the last one was about 3 years, 2 or 3
Mhm.
years ago. And I think we've, kept up fairly well, but we're always behind, it seems like. Policy question number 2 has to do with additional staffing. And the first one is just a placeholder for if the new finance director comes in and would like to have an assistant finance director. I think there's a need for that, but I would certainly defer to that position. There's a maintenance operator for the grounds, 2 part-time year positions at the info center. As you know, we're short-staffed everywhere. A maintenance operator at the trails and North Center. And then following some advice, I think from you, Hunter, we did do combine the positions for the seasonal trail builders and the, we changed the name of
Kind of
yeah.
trailhead host.
Yeah,
But yeah,
and then a seasonal employee at the water division. Any questions on that? And as you know, we have staff here.
mhm.
We need additional.
Sure. So how is it determined if we need that assistant finance director?
Well, once we make a selection on the finance director, I'll be working with them. Clearly, we're not going to make a decision for several months. And we'll get back to, believe me, I'm very prudent when it comes to adding staff, so it'll have to be a significant need for us to come back and say, yeah, fill it. And it may not just be strictly finance. I mean, one of the things I've talked about is the work it takes to align your strategic plan to all your business processes, including the budget, the capital plan, work plans. It may be someone that's going to be more oriented, not just towards finance, but towards that too, because there's a lot of work that is required to monitor and measure and align all these processes behind your strategic priorities. So we'll keep you posted on that.
I'm not in love with it.
No,
And my view is, Tony, I would think after you've been here a while, you'll come back and do some
Yeah.
shuffling anyway to make it better. So
sure.
I mean,
I
what finance director is not going to look in the budget and say, wait, I can have another person help
Yeah,
Take the
but they also have to be cognizant of other staffs also express needs which we don't take care of, so that they have to kind of model the way and be prudent themselves. So that's one of the things I'm looking for. Can, you know, there are different ways to skin this cat.
Bonnie, and maybe Dylan, how would you characterize, let's assume for the sake of this argument that there's not a change in your position. How would you see an assistant finance director complementing what's already going on in your staff? And how would it make your existing staff more efficient?
I think that there are so many big issues, and there always have been, but it seems like they are magnified now. There's so many housing issues, there's and the childcare, and there's so many areas that really the finance department the finance director needs to be involved in all of those. And in the past, that's not always been the case. And I think it's very important. I think economic development is an area that finance should be involved in. And I don't see that the way the position is established now, that there's ability to do that. There's time and ability to do that. And I think that position would allow for that.
You comfortable, Dan, leaving it as a placeholder? or
Yeah,
is that
I
what
am.
you're- okay.
And I think I wanted to hear that.
Mhm.
I just see the pressure again, especially with the things that we're trying to launch the next couple of years. If we are starting to look at different ways to leverage our 5A funds, if we're, that's one area that you brought up in terms of housing, but just the rate the budget's growing and the acceleration of the size of the staff and just the community, it seems to me that it's worthwhile to put in there. I think, again, Tony, this would ultimately be something that you have to evaluate, is more comfortable bringing in and creating that efficiency, because I think that is important. I think, so I would leave it in there for that reason. And then have that, when it's time, really look at this again really hard and make sure that, understand the scope, because that's what I'm kind of looking for, is that.
I think also that there's a need, as you know, for additional funding. We're gonna have to find some additional funding sources. And I think your finance director can certainly be an advocate for helping get those funding options maybe on the ballot, and maybe, of course, we couldn't do that ourselves by ballot law or, by laws and stuff like that, but we can certainly provide the information. And I think that's going to be critical.
Yeah, I'm not gonna doubt the monumental task of, that you have on your desk, and then a new person having to take it over is not necessarily gonna operate it as smoothly as Bonnie has straight away. And I'll be talking throughout the night about the acquiring more funds,
Yeah.
because that's gonna be my angle. And let's support it all.
And that's a really valid statement right there. If we're fortunate in getting significant federal dollars, whether it's for affordable housing or wildland mitigation or environmental sustainability, there are tremendous federal compliance requirements. That alone will dictate a person. But it'll be more than worth it, because hopefully we're talking about millions of dollars. So well worth it. But there's a lot of compliance requirements to that. They don't just write you a check.
Okay with the other positions?
Any questions or concerns on the other positions?
Technology. And since we had previously discussed these, I did not ask Joe to come and go through. He kind of gives an explanation.
Yeah.
They sounded pretty self-explanatory to me, and you were all aware of them already. There's 3 items here and they total 98,000. We did take out a couple of items, if you recall. The item C, the COVID-19 provisioning, that's a placeholder in case we get thrown back and need to do some more laptops for people to work at home and various other items.
Is this where, and I know I nixed it, but I tried to keep doing research as we went. Is this where we had the security cameras slotted. Does any other council, I don't know how you guys felt. At first, I was very much like, there's zero need for that, but I talked to the mayors from other towns, and it seems like they are actually pretty beneficial, that they've had good return on the security side and the community service side of those. I just don't know if anybody else had heard things or had feelings around
Where are they going?
town hall. I think they're proposed for town hall. Yeah.
Parks?
No, buildings.
Buildings.
Yep.
We put them in parks, if we increase the cost, because that's certainly an area of nuisance and vandalism.
I just don't know how you guys felt. Like initially I was, not too scooting away from the microphone.
We originally had 75,000 in there for that, and that was just just for those buildings and only a 1-year cost.
Well, for me, the scalpel is coming down on, these wants versus needs. And, looking at that big number for 2 years, I'm trying to look at things that we really had to have happen because we put it off for a year. This, in my mind, just kind of fell into that category of like, yeah, that's okay, but does it have to happen this year? I'd be happy to discuss it again next year. If there's consensus to move forward, there's obviously a benefit. I know in my businesses, I advocate to anybody in my business to put them in, because there's an immediate benefit, but I would say, in my mind, just wanted to get through this and see what we could really set aside, just because that number is still staring at me. I appreciate that it's 2 years worth of capital improvements, but if that could wait a year, it might look better next year, but I'll defer to.
I mean, that's the conversation that I think we should have and want to have. Is just, I knew it got asked, and sometimes in those things that do get cut, it's good to bring it up.
75,000 for 5 years. Is that correct? A one-time cost.
Please
I'd
jump
love
in.
to just add a little bit more insight. So we have webcams at the information center, at the marina, and we have 3 at the adventure park, 1 at the Nordic Center, 1 on the bike park, and 1 at the Tubing Hill. And about every 6 months or so, the police department asks us for footage from those webcams. The way the webcams are set up, it would just not deliver the kind of picture that you would want to be able to identify really anything. And also they don't record. And so Diane proactively reached out to Town of Silverthorne and to their provider to look into cameras that actually work very well, to the point where you can search by person, and then you recognize their face, and you can actually find their face on other cameras. And are they wearing a red shirt, the type of vehicle? And that would just be if something came up. We've actually been demoing 1 camera at the Visitor Information Center at the restroom because we've had some issues with vandalism there. And so Chief Wickman has had a chance to look at that camera as well and can speak to you about the quality. It's very good. And we're lucky that we can start from the ground floor. I happen to be married to somebody who has to deal with the 200 cameras or so at the town of Breckenridge. It's a lot. And when I mentioned Verkada to him, he was like, oh yeah, it's a great system, very easy to use. You don't need specialized knowledge to grab a snippet. So if the police department on a Sunday at 3 a.m. is saying, wow, we really need this footage, they don't need to reach out to IT. They don't need to reach out to Verkada. I can do it easily. Just grab a snippet from there. And that's why we chose that. It's integrated software and good cameras. If one fails, they just overnight you one. And we chose that because we kept hearing those requests from the police department for about 4 years now. And finally, Diane said, you know what, let's just put a plan together and do kind of the basic coverage of town buildings. Parks are a little bit more complicated because we need a power source and we also need internet access, but it's not impossible. It would definitely take a little bit more work on the infrastructure side of things. I hope that provides a little bit more background and insight into that request.
Can I ask Chief a question? Chief, how would you rate this in terms of security upgrades? Something that you certainly endorse and advocate for?
You're asking if I advocate this?
Yeah, just your,
Absolutely.
okay.
We had a sex assault on Safeway. We had to use the cameras from Walmart. And I also watched for about 12 hours and we were able to conclude that, you know, what she claimed happened didn't happen. So cameras are great. You get into the Big Brother stuff, but I think that what we're asking is important. When Diane got with me on this, I thought, you know, well, we thought that the visitor information, the bathrooms was good because we continually have criminal mischiefs there. And so that's why we put that there. So I think the long term would be a great investment.
I'm actually for spending this money and expanding the program for the parks. I've been looking into this. I know there's stuff happening in parks and I mean, if anybody knows me personally, I'm not a 1984 guy. Big Brother is not, I'm not about that, but in order to keep us safe, I think it's important. Take that. I can check this.
Additional, would it be for the park that we would have?
75 for 50 cameras. So
Well, see where those end.
Cameras.
You think of all the aspects of building that can cover that. It takes 12 cameras to cover a building.
I can argue both sides.
Make it 100,000 even and try to get them into the parks and there'll be more expense, but it'd be worth it because that's where most of your issues are.
I mean, I think we could also see where we start and,
Yeah.
next year we can add more and I'm keeping it to 75 because I do agree with Dan on, there's a number staring us down, but if that was the first request, I don't think we need to up it at this point, but I think it seems like.
So maybe we start off with what we've got and then we expand in the future.
Mhm.
Do that.
Yep.
I think that at least gets us off the ground and
Yeah.
we can see if the system is working and all and I'm sure you've already, Chief's already identified, he knows all the places where they really should be, or you would need them. Well, yeah, let's get started.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll add that back.
Sorry, I know I cut it there first time.
No, you weren't. Alan.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a consensus at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is this not reflected in here?
It is not.
No,
It is
put it
not.
back in.
I see Dylan doing this.
But as you know, you made more cuts and additions, so you're a good 1.5 million in the black. So you have opportunity to add things.
But Dylan, are you keeping track of things we're adding or taking away from, just so we know?
Yep, so far we're vetted 25,000 savings.
Thank-
100 vehicles and we just added back in 75, so.
Head of the game.
Question 4 has to do with sustainability environmental actions. You've seen many of these before. There's a membership in the Colorado Communities for Climate Action. We'd like to continue the reusable bottle strategy for 5,000. In participation in the Climate Action Plan. Green Team projects, that's an internal team. I think you're aware of that. The Solarized Summit program. And then the High Country Conservation Projects, the Energy Smart, and the Resource Wise programs. And then a placeholder of 100,000 for environmental sustainability projects. And many of you asked for an update or a plan, an annual plan to see how this money is going to be spent. We're not quite there with that plan yet. Don, would you like to expand on that just a tad?
So yes, this is a plan that's been in development for a little bit of time, and unfortunately, we had a gap of our environmental program coordinator for about 3 months just before the budget cycle started again. So we did not get full amount into that. As you know, as well, some of these projects come up as ending up as grant matches. An example would be for the North 10 Mile Creek wildfire mitigation program, which was originally scheduled for this year, utilizing the Rocky Mountain Youth Corps. Due to some staffing issues with Rocky Mountain Youth Corps. That project did not occur this year, and as a result, we're actually deferring that to 2022, and we'll have to use a contractor rather than the Youth Corps. So we'll have to use some funds for that in order to fund that project. So it'll be a grant match for that, and estimating probably in the ballpark of $15,000 for that. We don't have the exact dollar figures for that yet. We're also looking at opportunities for additional EV charging stations and some other programs as well. Hillary, do you want to come up and add any others or anything else to add on that? So yeah, it is in our overall plan to ultimately, knowing council's goal of getting to 100% net zero by 2035, what is our plan in order to get there? And mapping out a plan in order to do that, and ultimately using this $100,000 in order to implement those goals over the next several years.
General, it applies to this and every other placeholder that we have. What's the process to turn a placeholder into an expense?
It's not spent. It's in the budget. It's reflected in the ending fund balance. So, but it won't be spent. And we come back to council with that plan. And then we don't have to do a budget amendment. That's the reason for a placeholder.
Yeah. Is a budget amendment something that's harder to do than
Yeah.
than
You're revising the budgets. We have to come back to you for permission to appropriate money. But this process, you've already technically appropriated the money. We just come back and tell you what the money will actually be spent for. So it's more generic, but easier.
It's the same as a lot of the vehicles. Purchasing a vehicle.
just as a courtesy, you're coming back to us as a courtesy as opposed to an obligation, right?
Well,
No,
it's more than a courtesy. You haven't quite spelled out what you want to use the money for. I'll give another example is the childcare issue that we'll discuss. I mean, I think there's an interest in making the investment. You're not quite sure where exactly you want to spend it. It's going to be budgeted, but we're going to come back to you to get the details as far as how you want to spend that money.
I just want to be.
We would not violate
I
that
wanna
trust.
create the understanding
Sure.
that whether it's environmental, childcare, trucks, if we're putting in placeholders, what's the obligation from staff before that money, before the decision gets made to spend the money? What's the obligation to, are you informing us or are you asking for a decision?
A
of
decision
how
on
this money's
exactly
gonna be
how you
spent?
want it spent. You've appropriated the money, but you haven't given us clear direction how you want it spent. So we come back to you to get that. Now, the alternative is,
These
Yep.
placeholders can't be spent without council approval. Is that,
correct.
because we don't have enough clarity from you. Now, you could, the more, a fairly traditional route is you don't budget this and you amend the budget when you decide what you want to do.
I'm good with the most efficient method possible. I just want to make sure that we're
Yeah,
all understanding
sure.
that we've got a lot of placeholders in the budget, which is fine because it makes a more effective operation of the system.
Sure.
But before these placeholders get spent, you're not informing us of how you spent it. You're asking us if you can spend it on the following things.
Mhm.
Yes,
Mhm.
if
Okay.
I could interrupt real quick. and
Yeah.
add in an example from using the wildfire grant match or in this year's, actually the 2021 budget, the EV charging stations where we had a grant match for that. We come back to council for that because we need a approval to pursue that grant and get that grant and sign on the dotted line. So at least with this particular placeholder, almost in every instance, it will be coming back to you because we need your approval to pursue whatever program that is under this $100,000.
Same thing with large vehicles like the snowcats and those items, even though they're in here and they're really not a placeholder, but I guess they are because we don't know the exact cost. But we bring those back in the form of a resolution. to council.
I'm good. We have lots and lots of we have art, we have environment, we have entertainment. We got everything as placeholders and I'm good with it because it makes the system work more efficiently. I just want to understand the rules.
We will absolutely try to minimize those situations. You should have full clarity on almost all your expenditures when you adopt the budget. There's some circumstances that don't lend themselves to that clarity, so we absolutely will bring those back to you.
I'm good.
On any of these? You digging in, Andy? Something?
This is gonna be what I keep coming back to. What's, I'm great with putting 100 grand in for this particular thing. We need to, what, triple it, quadruple it? What do we actually need to do in the future? What is it that we're gonna be looking for money for? And, let's try to pin down, we just hired a Washington lobbyist. Let's pin down the areas that we're gonna end up needing to ask for money for and try to determine eventually, instead of placeholders, what the placeholder is gonna be 4 million for sustainability. And, where do we, how are we getting that? And, how are we asking for that is really more of what I'm looking for. And that's just gonna be in the future, can we work together to try to put these plans together for the ask? And that way we get well beyond talking about $100,000.
100% agree. And I think that's part of the, my goal for the environmental program, especially as well as the housing program, is how are we going to get, what is our roadmap to get from here to there? Developing a 1, 2, 5 year, 10-year plan on how to achieve these goals so that you have more knowledge going into it on what you might be anticipating down the road and how are we going to do what we're appropriating in order to meet these longer term goals. The past couple of years with the environmental programs, we've been gathering it and gathering data and gathering a lot of the baseline and benchmark information so we can start developing that larger plan.
Yeah, so let's just get that into the plan, Tony. Thank you. Thanks, Don.
Yep.
Good with 4, if that's what, I just say on the bottle strategy, that was part of my long-term hope that someday we will get closer to either banning them or instituting a tax on single-use water bottles throughout town, and maybe that can be some of our funding stream or for our trails, but I'd love to continue that conversation, but I think 4 we're good with, so that was just my personal plug.
I'm ready for it. I'm ready for it.
All right, there we go. We'll start working on that.
Question number 6. has to do
5,
with-
sorry. I think we're on 5.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Question number 5 has to do with some discretionary funding. Part of this is for the grants that we do, and we split some of those grants between the general fund and also the nicotine tax fund. And then some of this funding also comes from the budget from the nicotine committee. So the bottom 3 lines there have to do with the nicotine tax fund. The top 3, the first one is childcare support. And not knowing a number, we put in 250,000. So I think you'd like to have a conversation on this one. Summit County Search and Rescue for 50,000. And then the remainder of the grants, it's in the general fund for 61,000.
And this is the first year that we've given that kind of money to Summit Search and Rescue, correct?
Yes, sir.
Do you want, I can give you the background on that.
Yeah,
Is
would you-
that- Yeah, so that was an add-on that came, sorry, after some of you were able to have your one-on-one sessions. Speaking from the rescue group side of things right now is we're doing our first ever capital campaign to build a new training facility and barn. And I don't know if you've ever seen where we are now, but it's pretty rough. And so it's fun. The first time the rescue groups come around to all the towns in the county to ask for funding for that. And we're shooting to raise 4 million. So we're asking 50,000 from each municipality in support of that. So that's where that asks for. And it's specifically for getting all our vehicles inside and in a climate controlled environment with a training facility. So
$5.7 million facility, 14,000 square feet. The county and some private foundations have already donated 4.6 million out of the 5.7. So they're a long ways towards success. Breckenridge just awarded them 100,000. Their ask was between 50 and 100,000. We put in 50. They've also made similar asks in Silverthorne and Dillon. They're just waiting for their councils to make final decisions, but they're well on their way to achieving their goal. And they're up to I mean, the mayor knows, but they're up to, right now, this year, they're gonna probably exceed 200 rescues during this calendar year, so they're busy. And most, yeah, and most of them are front rangers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's also, that's part of, that's part of their capital campaign, so it's not expected or anticipated to be coming back again.
Nope. Once, yep.
Contribution to capital.
and it'll be under the similar agreement that we have now at the county. Once the facility's built, it will fall under the county's kind of whole.
That's in your budget.
Yep. So, yeah, so it's not a recurring expense by any means.
Mhm.
We get naming rights to something?
There's additional ones. See, we could spend more for, but speaking of that, it's a good.
Another one coming up here, the library.
It's a good segue that I was gonna ask, because I don't, unless it was on here and I can't remember. I know we roughly discussed it one night long ago, but the library, when they did their presentation, had said that they were looking for support in ways they weren't specifically asking us, and they had a teen wing of the new expansion that they were doing. And I'm wondering if that seems to really meet a lot of our nicotine tax goals in that healthy. Give them something to do other than smoke. And being at the library might be good. I think if they're still interested, and we could reach out, but I think it'd be a great way for us to put this money to work in the way it's intended, and something that's a little more local. And I'd love to offer them
Yeah.
the sponsorship
These
of
are
that.
the naming right opportunities they have suggested. For $15,000, you can have the new entrance on the main library in Frisco. For $20,000, you get the adult reading room. For $25,000, you get the library meeting room. And then the study rooms are $10,000 a pop, and then the teen room's $15,000. And then there's a work study kind of room, but
Seeing what we're getting from nicotine tax, I think
It's a great.
giving some to the teen room and the workroom would be a pretty appropriate use of those funds to give back.
Town of Frisco, $10,000 workroom. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, and teen room, because it's, I mean, this is for,
Are you saying do both?
I mean, I think the teen room, I sponsor the teen room because it's, this tax funds was to help the youth, and that's
Sure.
right on par with that. I'd love to add that in there.
I
We
like
could. 15, yeah, for that teen facility. Um,
Or 10,000 fans.
uh-oh. He said that with a dwindling confidence. I guess I don't have a real huge direction one way or another, so I'd just love to hear some of council's thoughts when they saw the childcare line on there, or issues or ideas. Go for it, Andy. Your eyes got wide on that.
I'm not for necessarily pulling the rug out from underneath the Summit County preschool. But we have been giving them 65,000 a year, which I think is at this point fine to maintain. I know their expenses are going up and all. I don't think we should be funding the extra of that program. I think that should be going more to the people if it can, in the form of vouchers or something, in order to be able to get to go to some kind of preschool. But I'd be open for, if we can assist them at all to try to make up, instead of just raising tuition, how can we help them out? Is that, potentially federal money, education would be part of our ask, and this is where if we need to keep defining what the asks are in order to put them in place where they need to be, as well as Summit County Search and Rescue. Can we pull some federal money that would go to emergency services that way?
absolutely.
So that's what I'm saying. I'm not looking to defund them or that sort of thing. But I think they're needing a good bit more money, and the model of getting it from the town is not necessarily the right avenue. So that's where I'm at, the 65,000 that we were giving them before, and some sort of voucher program with the 200,000. We need to build that too.
Sandy, just to be clear, you're kind of saying keep this amount in there, and maybe start with looking at paying the tuition for Frisco students based on some criteria we need to come up with. And then also if they need additional capital infusion, we wouldn't go above 65,000 or what do you?
Well, I know they were asking for more this year, were they not?
Yeah. 250,000.
They were asking for 250,000.
That's where that number
from us.
came, that's their ask.
Right, and then we had discussed it here, that, you know, that amount from us is probably not as appropriate as it is to give to the families. And so now they're gonna, you know, that's gonna be the shortcoming on their end. Then how are they gonna make that up? Are they just gonna raise tuition and it's just gonna go to the parents anyway, right? You know, can we include this? Can we figure out somewhere along the way what our ask federally is gonna be in order to say that, you know, part of our ask from federally is that our education areas that need, you know, that need some influx of cash, right?
Two federal sources. Existing is 3.5 billion for, you know, childcare development block grants, similar to the CDBG block grants. But even more important, in Nancy Pelosi's budget reconciliation bill of 3.5 trillion, not billion, but trillion, there's a heavy emphasis on what I would call soft services, healthcare and childcare. Now that's right now going through the legislative process in the House and the Senate. Hopefully it will come out by the end of this month, but there will be billions of dollars more for childcare. I mean, the president already has his childcare tax credit, but I think it expires in December. That's $300 a kid. That could be extended. So there's tremendous opportunities for our lobbying efforts when it comes to childcare. So I think that'd be a prudent course.
So, but I also want to make clear that we need to write down, you know, what it is that we need and what we're asking
Exactly.
for and for how that is going to get crafted into the ask.
Yeah.
And if we get that, that's great, but I think there needs to be some level of certainty provided
Yeah,
to
we can
them
Budget up.
from their budgeting. And, you know, we had this conversation revolving around trying to help them get their compensation factor to the employees up into something that was, that was livable, something that really would allow them to attract and keep entry level and, you know, mid-level staffing that really is such a benefit to the community. So it's not just about operations. This is about, you know, creating a culture, helping to create a culture and a workforce down there that's so beneficial to the children of the community and helping people in this community through augmentation of childcare dollars to allow them to participate more fully in the community, work more, those kind of things. So I don't want to get hung up totally on operations. I know it's got to, that's where it has to marry it. I mean, it's, you know, it has to, we have to reconcile that with our operations, but I want to make sure that we can make a commitment to them this year. And whatever is the most direct way to do it, just because we do it a way this year doesn't mean we don't. Now, part of this, I think, was, you know, in terms of their ask is how, you know, I would expect to see some kind of presentation from them in terms of how they're going to, how this is going to be disseminated throughout their budget and how it's going to actually meet some of those goals that we've identified that we want to see as a derivative, as a byproduct, a function of this investment in their school. So I could see that as well, while we could currently work on a path to create some other way to kind of put this money in the community for the same thing. But again, placeholder looms in my mind. But
This is where it belongs.
well, I agree, because I think we need to look at those two paths. Maybe it does make sense to work with them, and maybe that is the best way in the short term to benefit our community, not wait. Conversely, I don't know how long it's going to take to put together this other package and roll it out. Who's going to administer that? What the criteria are going to be for distribution? You know, who do we hand it off to? Is it part of a broader community? I mean, if we're talking about school, this money going to schools throughout the community, throughout the county, this seems like it ought to be part of a larger community conversation. Now, that being said, really is going to bung it up. So, you know, very interested in getting this level of support to the school, but I need to hear more from the school about how it's going to be applied.
They've already indicated that.
Yeah, so
180,000 for salary adjustments, 50,000 for tuition assistance, and 20,000 for capital projects. So the bulk of it would go to supplement teacher salaries.
And in the end, all the kids from Breckenridge or Silverthorne or Dillon go to Summit preschool.
On
I
63
come at this from a very different angle, which is my concern is having the kids in Frisco get daycare. And we can give $10 million to the Summit Preschool, and that doesn't mean anything to the kids of Frisco getting childcare. So the whole relationship is so weird to me that it's not our business. It's not our facility. We don't own it. We don't operate it. We just keep giving it money. And I guarantee they're spending it well and they need it. But what are we doing writing the big checks? I don't know who else is writing big checks. But again, I firmly want to step back and say, okay, we have a childcare crisis in our community. We're throwing massive money at it. Breckenridge, everybody's throwing money at the problem, disjointed from everybody else. Not only is it too expensive for some of the families that want to go, but we don't have enough of it. And I just think somewhere in here is a voucher system that supports the families of Frisco or the families of people who work in Frisco. Let's stay a little bit, and let's encourage the dialogue with the community. And I think there are some things coming down the pike that's going to say, okay, Frisco, you're giving 250, Breck, you're putting however much. Everybody's putting all this big money in. So this is our pot. Are we spending it wisely? And I don't think that Frisco giving Summit County's preschool $250,000 to pay their teachers a fair wage is the best way for us to be spending the money. So I support putting a lot more money into childcare, but I don't support writing a check to them as our method of spending. Tell us what it costs for a kid to be educated at the school, and those that need it, we will supplement those people appropriately. But I just have such a hard time accepting writing a blank check to a business that isn't our business, you know?
Well, we would suggest, we plan to have a work session with October 26th. We'll kind of lay the whole issue out for you, show you what your options are. And so use today as just, again, hate to use a placeholder, and then you can define for us better on October 26th what you'd like to do.
And to be clear, I don't think that those two, they're mutually exclusive, and I expect at some point maybe there'd be some kind of hybrid. You know, so I don't have the clear answer, Andrew.
And
at
I don't
all.
either.
So, but what I'm saying is, I think we can tread both paths concurrently. And as it happens, and one, I think making that kind of commitment to the school this year to kind of kickstart the process with the understanding that it gives them the year to understand that, by the way, we invest in our community, whether it's vouchers, however, they have a reasonable expectation that as they change their business model, that it's sustainable from the standpoint of how we're contributing to it. So I think it can go either way. And I think in the first year, again, it could be a hybrid model. So I'm with you. I understand.
I want to propose now, 250 can stay in the budget, nothing designated, because we have it on the calendar for a couple weeks from now.
Yeah, that sounds good. That's kind of where I'm at.
Because and making it very clear to anybody across the street that they should not come away from this conversation happy. They should come away from the conversation prepared to explain a lot of things.
Some more ideas, maybe. I mean, I'm looking forward to that.
And there is new leadership over there. So I think we are going to see something different.
Anybody in Frisco with a child between the ages of 0 and 3 can be happy right now, because we've just jumped our budget number from 65 to 250. But how that money is getting spent is subject to another conversation.
Yeah, and I think the preponderance of kids over there, Frisco kids are in that.
63% of the families are
63, yeah.
residents or employees of Frisco.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Diane, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Councilmember Erickson's point, this is a county-wide issue. And I did talk on Friday to the town of Breckenridge, because as we know, they have a program they've been doing for years. Early Childhood Options is aware countywide of the issue, and they're really trying to figure out as a county, how do you address how do you make this equitable across the county? And so I think to your point and to Tony's point here, with a little bit more time, I think that we will have more answers of how we can establish a program in Frisco, whether that is a voucher program, a tuition assistance program. There's also money that is being allocated to the childcare centers now for teacher salaries. So that $180,000 that was an original request, I think we have a little follow-up to do with the preschool at this point in time to find out how much of that funding they're currently getting as well. When we first met with them, that was not happening. Now it is. So I think we just need a little bit of time on this, to your point, but it is a countywide issue at this point in time, which we all know, but Early Childhood Options is really aware of it, as well as the BOCC.
And the Summit Foundation's on top of her, moving that direction very quickly as well.
Yeah.
Other of these 6 points, everybody good with the rest of those
Money well spent.
allocations? All right. I think we're good on 5, Bonnie. Thank you.
Would you like to go through this? This is another dollar amount that we're certainly not at a point where we know what that actual dollar amount is. So again, Andrew, another placeholder. And then 545,000 to continue with the housing helps and get that program, pursue remedies to address the housing shortage.
Again, add that into our proposal for future funds.
Like, as I said on our one-on-one, I hope we blow past that number and you guys need to come back for more. On the housing helps.
Yep. I agree. Any good with those?
Yeah, I'd like to see that number for housing helps go up, because I'd like to see us be way more aggressive with that program. I'd like to see a couple $1 million in it, because we should be out in front in the market buying houses, not waiting. That's just me.
No, I agree. So if we can, yeah. We
But-
see where, where we find that money, maybe we can
But isn't it easier to task that 5A money in that scenario? In other words, it's, if those opportunities to, if we start looking at housing helps and, we're looking, identify 700, basically for buy downs, what we're talking about in terms of, we do the buy, we put on the workforce covenant, we put it back in the market. In terms of the budgeted amount, would the ultimate budget amount be just the delta between our purchase price and the resale price? Or, we don't need $3 million in the budget operationally, even though we might have 3 properties under contract or on the market. At the end of the day, the actual spend is only going to be that delta between the purchase price and the buy down price.
There's a delay between when you sell it, so you have to show the expenditure, and then you're gonna show the revenue on the other side, but that could be months or a year. So you'd have to show the true expense up front, and not just the difference, because you don't know when you're gonna sell it and at what price. But your point is valid. There is just gonna be a marginal delta, but you can't budget that way.
But I think given what we're seeing right now and until things change, I think it doesn't seem like we'd be the holder of that title for too long, the way
Yeah,
people
not
want
much
a deed
right.
restricted unit. So I don't think we're looking at a year and
Yeah.
in turning that around.
No.
So. Yeah.
Do you want to, can you move that up then? Does that need to be moved up to say, let's, pick a number for the sake of argument, say $1 million so that we could get in front of a purchase if we wanted to, in terms of a buy down? Say we had a $900,000 buy down that we wanted to flip.
Yeah, that's $3 million to play with in your fund balance. You could do that.
It's out there where there's 2 units.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd be in support of that.
So we move that number to $1 million.
Yeah. Because part of that is with the CDOT lot, we haven't had any kind of conversations about other ways to fund that project besides cash. And,
We expressly said we don't want to rely on that.
yeah, so,
We'll talk to you on the 28th more about that.
okay, good. All right,
Yeah.
then I would increase moving that number up and housing helps then and try and make that more aggressive.
Would you want
$1 million.
add $1 million or go to $1 million?
I would add $1 million.
I had, okay, so
Yeah.
that's-
You comfortable with that?
you still have a fund balance of over $2 million.
I think we just threw out Dylan's numbers a little bit.
No, it's a different fund, so.
Well, I mean, just
He's
curious.
trying to-
Now we've overspent by 900.
Yeah, It's a different pot of money.
Well, we haven't spent, we committed. we
Yeah.
already committed.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. And I thanks Dan for speaking up because I agree and that's not been sitting well with me. So.
Are you ready for question 7?
I think so.
Which has to do with the community planning projects. First, we have Unified Development Code amendments. I believe this is like an annual.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of an annual revision.
Mhm.
And then a transportation master plan update. Tony, do you want to talk about some of these?
Well, the master plan, you haven't done since 1986, clearly it's overdue. You should be doing master plans every 20 years, so we're in arrears there, so they're not inexpensive as reflected here, $200,000, but they're absolutely necessary. Especially with emphasis on multimodal, you definitely want to get an update of your plan to encourage pedestrian, bicycle, e-bike type of transportation, what kind of corridors and infrastructure they would recommend. Even look at zip cars. I still think, if you want to reduce your parking requirements, then you need to also be looking at zip cars as an alternative to people that don't have cars. So that would go a long way to cutting down on what I would call very valuable wasted land for cars. But that would all be covered and things like that.
Tony, on that transportation master plan, just for my education side, and I don't have a problem with that number if that's what we think it costs, but as I was in 3rd grade when we last did ours, is that something like they take into account also like everything that CDOT has projected, like the 203?
They're gonna look
The
at the
201
whole
and-
transportation system,
Incorporate
federal roads, county roads, state roads, local roads, the whole enchilada. Yeah, be very comprehensive.
Do they try to utilize some of the work that's already been done in some
Oh,
of those
yeah, the
cases?
First thing they'll do is look at existing data and studies and then build off of that and start making projections into the future, but they'll look at a baseline of information first.
There's no, looking at some of the traffic study analysis that was done for the GAP project, I know a fair amount of us had some heartache as to what they thought the projected numbers were, and we all thought that was kind of the current state of things. So I'm just leery sometimes of a little bit of what.
Yeah,
Where
the
that
state
goes,
is
but-
also spending $5 million on a statewide transportation survey to find out what the driving habits are statewide. So that data will also be clearly important for them to look at. It'll take about a year.
Good with those. Any other questions or concerns?
This one is an update to the Central Trails Master Plan. It was adopted in March of 2017. And I would like to refer you to page 12 of the policy section here. There's also the construction enhancement and wildfire mitigation and maintenance in Frisco's backyard, and then another wildfire mitigation. We added 200,000 in there from the original time you saw this. Those 4 items all interrelate. Diane or Tony?
I can speak to that.
Okay.
I mean, on page 12, so you're looking at, first and foremost, an update to the trails plan. Now it's 100,000. We've been working with Andy, the Frisco backyard area. You're gonna have to develop both a wildfire mitigation and the opportunity for additional trails in that sector of the community. And then more as seed money, because this is money in a SOFA when it comes to wildland mitigation. But this is the money, hopefully, you can represent to the federal government when we're soliciting millions of dollars, and we have some skin in the game. They always want to see that you're spending a little of your own money, but this is a multi-million-dollar initiative that will require federal resources to truly accomplish. But this will demonstrate good faith on your part that you're willing to put some of your local resources into the game. So that'll be important.
Primarily being used for planning.
Yeah. And
Is it pretty accurate to say we've pretty much accomplished the 2017 Trails Master Plan?
I don't think so. I think we're actually pretty, I think really,
maybe Don can speak to that. I wasn't.
And Diane certainly jump in as well. But if you recall, back in June, we had a work session with town council where we went over and the PRA, so planning area 3 of the Trails Master Plan, Pete Swenson and Diane and their team have done an outstanding job at that. But we haven't touched planning area 4, which is the Frisco backyard. There's a number of other trails and connections that are on the books. An example would be the sidewalk along Highway 9 between the middle school and Walmart on the west side of the road. That's in the plan that hasn't been accomplished yet. So there still is a bit to go on that. Right now, I think the idea of the update is to incorporate what has been accomplished so far, what's changed, as well as look at a couple of other things that have not yet been accomplished.
But I don't know, seems like a lot to spend 4 years after we just spent a lot. And we still have stuff on the list. You know, and I am a believer, for the most part, if we sat around, we probably know a lot of the things that are going to come up on this $40,000 plan. Are we going to finish 2017, or is this going to probably leapfrog some projects?
I think the result of this is it could lead to a reprioritization and a reordering of some of that list. Again, knowing what we know now and what we've learned over the course since this plan was originally adopted.
I'm just looking, we haven't done our streets since 1986, and we're doing our trails every 4 years. Something there seems a little odd.
I think that's good community priority. I think to your question, Andy, because I worked a lot on that original plan, and I think Diane or Don can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, you know, like the marina side, like we said, like this is where we're gonna start. But the plan itself didn't call out what we now have. That's what Pete's crew took from that document. And then, so part of my assumption of this is, now that we've worked well with the Forest Service in that relationship, and they've said, yes, start going to the other side of the bike path. Now we need to say, what does that look like? It was called out in the plan as one of our priority zones, but not what we were gonna do. And now we can kind of say, this is what we're gonna do. And they'll say, go for it. The other benefit I know, or not benefit, but looking forward, is a lot of that kind of down by Lusher Court, Dam Road. There's a lot of stuff called out in there that's just kind of said, this needs a lot of work. But that whole area is probably gonna get retooled. So some of it just says, like we did with the GAP project, if CDOT comes in and does something, they'll do the trail for us, which is a benefit. But it is, I do see your, but our roads have been fine over the last 50 years. Right?
This also just sort of accelerate that the wildfire sort of accelerates what the trails plan was, because it's all going to end up working together per the Forest Service and the environmental studies and everything else that have to happen. These areas have just not even been looked at, and they're on the plan. But yeah, if we update the plan, that will go to the next part of the plan.
As long as, you know, those who were part of the 17 see the benefit of doing this, I'm just, you know, I don't have the depth of knowledge to say this is a great thing to do, so I defer.
Well, one of the things, and what I like about this description here is a sentence at the bottom that talks about analyzing capacity issues and potential solutions for trailhead management. I mean, it's Zach Stop, North 10 Mile, you know, the parking lot at the west end of Main Street, it just anywhere there's a trailhead, the pressure's intense. So I think kind of, you know, having a group of people take an overarching look at that, talk about how expanding the trail network can help just, you know, spread some of that pressure out, I think is pretty critical to keeping of people's experience level here high. You know, it's just going to get busier. So I think that's what
We do have a design shred happening tomorrow for the master plan, or no?
No, that's for the complete streets.
That's for complete street, right? Okay, sorry.
Different mess.
Right, sorry.
Well,
That's
more about we'll have a shred for this.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought that was part of it.
I think we're good with 7 then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to 8, this has to do with streets projects. That's concrete replacement, and that's 3 different items. Concrete replacement at locations around the town, that's usually curbs and repairing curbs. And then Town Hall Plaza, we have some trip hazards out here, we'd like to get that repaired. And then some tennis court resurfacing, this is for just resurface and restripe the tennis courts at Pioneer Park and Summit Middle School. So those total 99,400. We have asphalt resurfacing and preservation. This is streets and bike paths, and they'll be determined after the spring thaw, and we're able to identify and then fit them into the schedule.
We'll get you a map of those
Yes.
streets we
Um,
supposed to have. Do you have them here?
Mayor and council, I have a list I can share of what's on the street
That's great.
asset plan for 2022.
Good. Right.
If I can share my screen.
That'd be great.
Give me 1 moment, please, Jeff.
Soon as you're ready, Deborah, let me know.
You are now a co-host, Jeff, and should be able to do it.
Go, Jeff.
Everybody see that?
Yes.
Here we go.
Yep.
Okay, so this is the page on the asset management plan for streets that was approved back in April. This is the page for 2022. You can see the top left area there is slurry projects with the streets listed out and how much we're going to be doing. And then just below that, you'll see the mill and overlay projects that we're going to have. And of course, this is all subject to change based on how these streets weather through the winter and whether we prioritize other streets over these that had worse abuse or worse damage over the winter. And then to just jump ahead real quick, I know there was questions about the alley paving project that's been delayed for a couple of years. Over there on the top right, you'll see the alleys that are remaining that need to be paved. If we do these, then the alley paving project will be complete. So I hope that kind of clarifies what you're looking for there.
Just on a program where roughly he's asphalt overlaying about 10% of the city's lane miles, which is ideal. That's what you want to do is do that on a 10-year cycle, especially given the weather and the frigid temperatures here. So he's right on money. And we'll conduct a comprehensive paving condition index analysis this next year too, so that all the roads will be graded on a scale of 0 to 100. And so that will help prioritize roads in the future.
Jeff, what did you have, just to double check, on the alley paving projects, top right of your sheet? We don't need to see it again, but what was that number again?
500,000 on there.
I'll have to double check that. Hold on.
For the overlay?
Nope, for the alley paving.
Oh, alley.
Alley paving is 250,000. That number is a little bit lower. When this plan was done, it was not known what kind of condition we'd have to work with on the dirt alleys. So asphalt's gone up quite a bit. So I added in the budget, I added a substantial amount to cover those increased costs that we're going to see, because asphalt is just far more expensive this year than it was last year. So that's kind of what that goes for. And then the alley, the Teller alley from First to Second is going to need a lot more subgrade work to get that done up to standards.
Okay, so that's why that's significantly higher on our page than on your spreadsheet there, as you're just adjusting for cost of materials and some of the other aspects.
Yes, sir. Cost of labor, materials. Yeah, basically, unfortunately, the cost of everything.
The biggest cost is oil. The price of oil has doubled since he initially had this, gone from over 35 per barrel to over 70.
Good.
This one is number C, Craftfield Streets. That is for bike paths for 10,000. Item D, we actually raised this number after conversations with council one-on-ones. It was 500,000. We've raised that to $1 million for landscaping and median.
And we're gonna have a work session with you on that. Jeff's done a good job. He's gone down to Eagle County and taken pictures of all their major roundabouts. We're gonna put price tags on what the original cost was, what the current cost would be if you wanted a similar design, so you could visualize what you're about to pay money on, but the minimum, they're $1 million, and they go up from there. We don't want to mislead you into a $500,000 roundabout, because they don't exist anymore.
Project?
No, just the landscaping of the median, I mean, the roundabout itself.
One round, both roundabouts.
I would.
Like,
That's
what
the
should our expectation be of spending $1 million?
landscaping of roundabouts without art.
Understand.
Yeah.
$1 million gets us the one roundabout at 8th Avenue. Is that what we're?
Yeah.
Okay, there's a lot of,
Yeah.
there's a lot more to this
Yeah.
project. that-
Jeff will have nice pictures. I think his favorite's the one, if you've been down to Eagle recently, they built one about a year ago, as you come, if you're going westbound, big Town of Eagle sign there. It's very well done. We'll find out what it costs, but that's one of the more attractive ones we've seen that has minimal, what I call zero-scape landscaping, but attractive and functional.
I think what you're getting at is we should be prepared for at least the next 3 years to have to keep doing this to get
Yeah.
all the concrete filled in the, not in the median section,
We've got however
medians.
many feet of median, 2 roundabouts,
Yeah, so we've got,
entrance signs and everything else. So
I've been telling people that the GAP project, the hard part's done, but we'll still be doing construction for probably 3 years on it. So,
beautification.
Also to be added in our ask.
Yeah, infrastructure, yeah. Mhm. Absolutely.
Storm system repairs, this is systems that were identified in the 2018 storm sewer study. And this would cover some excavation repair for damaged areas on the Granite Street Alley storm sewer system. Anything to add? Jeff?
No, just so council knows, we did do a bunch of extensive cleaning this year under the alley, or excuse me, the storm system repairs. We did extensive cleaning on the entire Granite Street Alley storm system to include the vault that's in the Mount Royal parking lot. So we got it all cleaned out. We identified some more issues this year that then we will repair next year.
And then fiber infrastructure of 200,000.
More federal money.
Would more money on fiber infrastructure get us better service?
I can answer that, not right away, council member. This money would really be used to, I'm sorry, but I gotta speak honestly.
No, I want that. Thank you.
Right now, what you're looking at is we've done the backbone this year of fiber conduit all the way down Granite Street from 7th, all the way to Town Hall area, and all the way down West Main to the Summit Daily Building where the fiber hub is. So we've got conduit in the ground right now to start building on that system. However, where we stand right now is we need to use some money next year to get a communications engineer on board and start designing the town's fiber system based on the conduit that we have in the ground now and the conduit that we want to put in the future. Some of this money will also be used like it was this year for the Dig Once ordinance. If y'all remember, the town has the opportunity to now partner with utilities when they're doing large excavations to get conduit in the ground for our fiber optic system. So that's what we did this past year with Sturgeon and AT&T and Comcast. So there's going to be some money in there that if there's going to be a big project from a utility, whether it be XL Energy or somebody else like that, or even a large property owner that's going to be doing a lot of work on the streets regarding their development, we'll have the money to put the conduit in and participate in those projects.
My only thought is there's a lot of things we're spending money on that if I had to choose, I would have improved technology. So if we said to you, let's make it 500,000, would that create a better result? Because fortunately, we can probably do that and all the things on the list, but
I'd suggest again, similar to our wildfire, you're showing a little skin in the game. Biden has put
Yes.
billions into his 1.1 infrastructure and jobs bill for broadband. That's what we should be going after. And this will show that you got some skin in the game. But we think,
More skin gets us more internet.
well, not necessarily, because I mean, this is a multi-million-dollar investment. Let the federal government pay for it. But it's good that you're showing some community resource commitment. That helps. But I think that's sufficient right now.
Whatever it takes.
Yeah. Now we gotta deliver for.
You know,
it.
what that can do for us as well is get us a plan on the shelf. So
Yeah.
that when funding does come available,
Mhm.
we have a quote
Shovel-ready.
unquote shovel-ready plan ready to go.
Yep,
That's also how we're gonna get the funding,
yep, yep,
is by having the shovel-ready
yeah.
plan.
Or plans like the wildfire mitigation. They're already ready to go. They just need to be funded.
All okay on those?
I just go, I think the only one, yes, but the only one I wish, and I think we have to do it probably because Sursa says we do at this point, but I mean, we've probably spent $100,000 in the last 6 years on fixing the cracks on the concrete at Town Hall. I mean, like, I think we've got to figure out a better system and a better way to, something to do out there. So I don't know what that is, and I know it'll probably cost, the way we know that it gets to get planners, more than that, to have somebody come up with a plan for it, but you know, I think one of the community suggestions from a few years back that still makes sense is let's just put community gardens on top of it, and we no longer have a trip hazard or spending $25,000 a year to fix concrete that no one really utilizes. It just seems, it's painful to me to see that. And I know it's a relatively small number, but it's a continuing expense. And I think that's tiresome, and we can do better, and we should. So I think, I don't know what that looks like and if we need to go that route, but maybe next year, or mid-year plan, find a better use of that space.
Very underutilized.
Cheaper
Yeah.
to dump dirt on it, fertilize it.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I could tell you that Public Works would support that because it would be less shoveling.
Yeah,
Could be a revenue, we could do an outdoor grow there.
so maybe we could see what we can do there, maybe before we jump fully in and
We'll
use
look
this
into
money
that.
for something, but yeah, whatever. Otherwise, everybody good with everything else in 8? You guys want to take, let's take a few minutes. We've been good run at it. All right, there's food if people wanted it.
What's that?
There's food. Thanks for speaking up on the housing helps. That's been bothering me. Didn't have that in my notes. That's where I'm at.
On page
Let's,
10,
yep, number 9 on page 10.
This is related to building projects and improvements. The first item is for general building maintenance. This is just a dollar amount that we put in the budget to do various projects throughout the town owned rental property. And then the second one is the same thing, just a placeholder in case repairs are needed. I know that that contract is changing and that'll be going away, so that it's possible that will not be needed. The next one we have talked about earlier, I think that this has been on the budget for at least last year, to design and upgrade and assess the ADA compliance at the Visitor Information Center. And by the way, this expenditure request would come out of the lodging tax fund. And even with that coming out, the balance at the end of 2022 would still be 700,000. The next one, as you know, the town hall carpeting has seen a lot of wear and tear.
Hey, Bonnie,
Yeah.
can I just clarifying question again? Sorry. Design, upgrade and construct, or just
No construction.
50,000 to design the new bathroom in the visitor center?
Accessibility, yes. It's actually, it says the design would include a ramp into the front door. It's for completion of the construction design.
Okay, it
And
doesn't
then-
include construction.
No, construction will be budgeted in 2023. The house where the town manager resides for many years. And not many repairs or any upgrades have been done to that facility. And after this last transition, we did a pretty thorough assessment. And there's some things that definitely need to be maintained there. So we put in 50,000 for that. The next one, historic park deck stair replacement, that has been on the budget for at least the last 2 years and hasn't been done yet.
Pete's family's home.
This one is the big one. This is for construction of the slope side hall at the Peninsula Recreation Area, 5.2 million. And then the next one is again at the PRA, the Gay Lodge, to replace the soundboards and the panels. Town hall dumpster enclosure. This is another one that we've been attempting to get completed. I think believe we had some electrical line issues, so we're asking for this again. It's another one that's a carryover that you've seen in prior years.
Did you, and I don't think they're contentious by any means, but there was the town hall carpet, Day Lodge flooring, heaters at town hall.
Did I miss, I missed the town hall, the heaters at the town hall, and then replace the heaters at First and Main building. 30,000 of that would be for that replacement, and 5,000 is typically budgeted just for general maintenance at that
Yeah.
building.
We thought you could reduce that. I mean, we're gonna have you revalidate your direction last week on First and Main, but clearly if you intend to sell it or scrape it, probably wouldn't be beneficial to spend $30,000 on heaters. We can say that. And the other 5, just like Bonnie said, would just be for maintenance in the interim. We'll cut that down to $5,000. Add that to Dylan's list. Dylan, we still in the black?
Now we're a little bit in the red.
Oh, we gotta climb out of there.
Got it ready to go.
Oh, okay.
You want to mark, take that down to 5,000, is that what I'm hearing? The First and Main, yes.
Yeah, if you intend to scrape the building over your investment.
Not functioning, or they're just at their
They're no
aged
longer
out.
code compliant and you can't find any parts for them. And they've been there since, they're original to the structure, 1967.
7, that's as old as me. Did they, and everything still works at this point?
Yes, I didn't get any word that there's a safety issue, but, it's possible, I suppose. And we do have a tenant in that building.
Yeah, I think we have to. Somebody living upstairs, so.
Jeff's on if you have a
Give
question.
'em a Walmart heater.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I just wanted to answer any questions on those heaters. They are 1967. If you could picture an old, basically a mobile home heater that fits between the studs, and it's a gas heater. They no longer are parts available, and we've been trying to basically Frankenstein them and keep them going. And there are individuals living up in those apartments, and those are the heaters that we're talking about.
Barring having a plan, I think we need to keep that
Yeah.
on there until we know where we're going with that building.
Working into code.
We're gonna put the-
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Mayor, we can, get rid of the gas aspect of those heaters and look at getting some efficient electric heaters in there instead, so we can reduce our greenhouse gas emissions out of that building as well.
That'd be great. Thank you, Jeff.
Potentially be cheaper anyway.
Good with all those.
Item number 10, we already had a discussion about that. I don't know if you need any more detail. This ties with the trail plan update. Item B is improvements to the playground parks, would be Walter Diamond Park, Pioneer Park, and Meadow Creek Park. And if you recall, a few years ago, was council's desire to have a 5-year parks plan of $750. Last year, we weren't able to spend that much money with COVID, so we've added this back in for 2022 and I think 2 or 3 more years on the 5-year capital plan. Meadow Creek Ice Skate Park upgrades. This would install upgrades to the natural ice, and they're yet to be identified, so I believe council discussed 50,000. Next one is funding for public art, and that's 50,000. That's seed money, again, for art projects throughout the town. Do you want to go into any detail about additional requests on that? Or?
Yeah, Melissa had also requested a strategic arts plan, which we would recommend. We'd certainly recommend prior to that, we have a discussion with the council about perhaps creating a kind of an arts commission. Because if you do that, then they should be engaged in this arts strategic plan, and you can either pay for it, which she's recommended, or we could do it in-house. That's your prerogative. I've sent her a couple of plans from Parker and Silverthorne. One was done in-house in Parker, one was done by a consultant in Silverthorne. They were very pleased with their study in Silverthorne. They're going to update it. They did that in 2015. So any feedback on that, or subjects you want to bring up in a future work session?
Good until I see where it goes for me at this point.
Yeah, we could kind of just use this as a plug, but come back and have a work session discussion on a broader discussion about the arts and arts commission and giving it some business direction. We can plan on that. I'll talk to Melissa.
Yeah, we haven't come close to spending what we've had in it, but
Yeah, the
But
25,000.
I like the idea of, leaving it there and exploring it as it comes to us
Okay.
to see, but I don't anticipate this year spending that much, but.
We do anything, a work session.
We have essentially a commission with Make Frisco. It's, the people that matter locally who care about ours. But, just for us getting together and discussing doesn't cost that much, but as we add, the $5,000 painting Frisco Main
Oh, yeah.
Street, or painting, the bathrooms at the parks or whatever, that's fine. But the main thing is that this needs to be just the start of, multi-million-dollar art pieces at roundabouts and whatnot, right? If we're talking about the future of what we want to spend art on, and or, as Andy's talked about, initial front entry pieces and all that sort of thing. The gateway pieces are, anywhere from, $100,000 to $1 million, depending on what we decide to do. So, I think Melissa also just wanted to add that, we're gonna want more in the future for that sort of thing. Also goes with wayfinding.
Yeah. So we'll just earmark it right now and then schedule to have a broader discussion with you in the next couple of months on the arts.
And get it in our proposal to,
Yeah.
to the, feds.
Yeah. Mhm.
Bonnie, will that Meadow Creek Ice Skate Park upgrade one, is that lodging tax?
No, that's capital.
And why would that not be lodging tax? It would seem like that's not inconsistent with the, the upgrades and the maintenance you do for the skate park, for the frisbee golf course, for
A section of that money goes to the, for recreation.
exactly, that's kind of my point. So
We can move that.
can you use it the lodging tax?
Makes sense.
And then wayfinding is the final one on here for 12,000, and that's throughout the town and at the Peninsula Recreation Area.
Is that wayfinding that's just a continuation of updating everything we've been doing and completing that, or?
This is mainly for directional signage, particularly at expand the trail system and maybe some additional directories. It's not gonna get you too far for 12,000 bucks.
When are we,
And he's right, you can spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on this.
when are we gonna be getting when is that, the final recommendations from the consultants on the ice, the Meadow Creek, when is that scheduled?
It's supposed to be at the end, by the end of this month. I wrote myself a note to follow up because it's supposed to get it late September, early October. As soon as we get it, you'll get it.
All right.
And I think the staff has estimated 50, which I think is a little more generous. We want to be on the safe side, so I hope that we're not surprised by their findings.
Yeah, I would,
But they worked with the staff, so I hope, I
I
don't think
expect
we
that to
will.
be bigger, actually.
Okay, well, we'll find out for
That's-
sure.
I'm
in a
just
couple
curious,
weeks.
what's
Yeah.
informed that number to this point?
Yeah.
And I'm ready to wait, to see what the recommendations are, but
Kind of One of Andy's famous placeholders.
For something.
it's famous.
Lines with,
the Andy asterisk.
with Dan on the ice. Because I agree with Dan. I think it is gonna be more, and I know I'm on the outlier on here, but how much we put into parks based on where they came in all of our community surveys, like I think if we had to up this,
You want to double it just to be safe?
no, no, personally, I'm gonna suggest something really unpopular and I'd say take it from the above line B. If we need to on that Meadow Creek, because it goes in line with that
Oh,
park.
part of the
But I know that
budget
that's
part.
probably not consensus across councils, but I just, I think I'd rather, back to what Andy said earlier, I think, given some of the priorities we've seen from the town, I think 750,000 makes more sense in our environmental goals than it does in our park goals from what our community said, but this is what we've committed to, but it's just, now's the time to make those comments and I'm otherwise good with all of this.
I mean, I say, this goes right back into the money we're missing that we need in order to fund all of these projects. We need 750,000 in our parks, bottom line, because like, we want lighting, we want all kinds of stuff that we haven't had, and especially if we're updating for skating and also, I don't know that pulling it from parks and giving it is the way. I think it's just, how do we make up these shortcomings?
Well, the ice wasn't part of, we did those parks plans and we saw the sketch plan for Meadow Creek, ice. This kind of consideration of improving the ice amenity there for wintertime activation is really not part of the conversation, But so many of them are connected, so things that we do to make the park more accessible, user-friendly. It's certainly going to improve the environment for ice, but I think the 50,000 for ice upgrades, I'm thinking, more manpower. I'm thinking a machine that doesn't plow the snow around the outside, but blows it. I'm thinking boards for ice. I'm thinking, ways to make sure that the cracks are patched, all the time, almost every day. So, there's gonna be considerable manpower component there. And that's when you start thinking about labor to get somebody out there every day, move snow right away, because you're gonna want, part of it for me is a commitment to making sure that the ice rink stays the same size the whole year, that the boards are out there and they're maintained, and that, there's rubber matting inside the gazebo, that there's more park benches, that there's more. So it has to get easier, but anyway, I haven't put numbers to all those kind of things, but it seems to me when you start adding them up, $50,000 doesn't go as far as I think it does. But I would like to keep the 750 in terms of its commitment to playground and those other improvements to Meadow Creek. Ice seems to be outside that a little bit. But
Is this an ongoing expenditure then, or is this something we need to maintain, that we need to put in the 5-year for the lodging tax fund?
It could be an ongoing expense.
yeah,
Can we wait to see the report?
Okay.
Let's wait, well, let's wait to see the report to see what we end up doing, to see what we need to
Yeah.
maintain over the course of years.
Yeah, you'll have the information, so if you want to adjust the budget before you adopt it officially, we'll have time.
no, that's all.
We'll make a note, and I'll follow up. Hopefully they'll have the report in late September versus early. But we'll get you the information.
It's starting to get cold. It's gonna be frozen soon.
Call this morning.
Anything else on 10? You guys good with all those?
Yeah.
All right.
For a few budget highlights here. These are all out of the lodging tax fund. There's the townwide forestry management, PRA landscaping, grounds operations, equipment rental, playground repairs, bike park maintenance, Main Street Flowers comes out of here, weed control, disc golf course management, maintenance, and skate park maintenance. Most of them are pretty small items, with the exception of the playground repairs and the grounds operations. And those are pretty routine. We ask for these every year, part of our services.
Earlier in the year, there were a lot of conversations about situations, conditions at the skate park. And at some point, we brought in some security, did we not?
We did that last year.
Last year, right? Is that something that still is something that's necessary down there at this point?
I'd just say to Jeff and Addison's crew, the flowers on Main Street, I think we got way more than that much money out of them this year, and how good they looked and the amount of people I saw taking photos of them every single time I was down there. It was just a compliment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good with the budget highlights.
Wreak havoc on the flowers.
Are you ready for 11?
Yep. Yes.
Okay, we've touched on some of these, but let's talk about item A, and that's e-bikes for the Nordic trails. We reduce the vehicle usage and are more direct means of transportation for staff around the peninsula area, recreation area throughout the town. Cost of $6,000. This is also for the Nordic trails, a Bobcat, and that's used to transport fuel, staff, and supplies to job sites that you can't reach with a pickup truck. And then we already talked about item C. I believe we approved that. We talked about E, F, and G. The one we didn't talk about is replace the Tooting Hill Snowcat for 400. That's just follows the asset replacement plan. And then skipping down to H through Q, those are all replacements. And they're on this list because they're part of the 5-year capital replacement plan. The item R is to overhaul the fuel system. And I hope Jeff is still on. Okay, there was conversation about whether we needed this if we were converting to
Yeah.
electric vehicles.
Fortunately, the answer is yes, we do.
The
not gonna convert that quickly.
item S is for a garbage truck, a cab chassis. This would allow, this is similar to a large trash truck, and it would allow our staff to use the
Automated.
yeah, automated to empty the trash. Save a lot of time, a lot of workman's comp, I would imagine.
Mhm.
That was, on H there, just to be sure, that was, we are gonna replace that
With a hybrid.
police vehicle with one of their new
Yeah.
hybrid interceptors, okay.
That's just be another one. Look forward to them producing an all-electric police pursuit.
And on the,
Is there,
go ahead.
is there movement on any of these non-vehicle, this, whether it's the Bobcats, the skid steers, the mowers, to be able to convert more to electric? Is there?
Thought that looking, because again, that came up to cast me, especially looking at the smaller equipment like lawn mowers, hand type of tools, is that they're looking at that. So hopefully we can start doing that next year.
Wherever we can, I
Yeah.
hope we do.
We
even if it-
definitely want to go green sooner than later.
One note on that, council, we did get a battery powered lawnmower with rechargeable batteries. It was last year, I believe, we tried it out. And unfortunately, with the amount of turf that we have to do, it wasn't very effective, meaning that we had to come back and charge the batteries a little too often, and we lost a lot of time with those mowers. So we have been looking at all of those things, trying to get them more electric or battery powered, but right now, aside from just homeowner use, they're really not quite there yet, but they'll get there.
Tony, are we planning on doing a work session on the fuel system before we commit to this direction and look at all our options? I know we need to do it, but I know in the past we've had some conversation around possibly contracting with the county or even with local gas provider, like gas stations. I just think if this is the highest end cost we would have to be prepared for, let's put it in there. But I think we should have a bigger conversation as a council, because there's some other considerations that I think we should take into account and discuss.
Makes me ill to spend almost $500,000 on a technology and a process that's going to be a dinosaur in a couple of years. But Jeff can speak to that as far as what legitimate alternative we have to this expenditure, because we've chatted briefly about that. If you want to speak to that, Jeff.
Yes, sir. We have looked into contracting with the county. It's not that much of a savings because of the cost that they add to every gallon of gas that we would purchase or fuel that we would purchase from them. It is also not the most efficient way to do it, being that we'd have to go all the way to the county commons to fuel up. And that would take away from snow removal and things like that, having to get out there. And we also looked into getting fleet cards, if you will, for local gas stations. But that, there's no savings involved there, simply because we get bulk prices for the fuel that we get delivered. And we would be paying market price, if you will, at gas stations minus tax, of course, we wouldn't be taxed, but, and then having somebody run that system for us, if I remember right, it was around $40,000 to $50,000 a year just to administer that card system. But yeah, we certainly can have a work session and discuss it further. I realize that's a hard chunk to take out, especially as we're going to electric, but you also have to consider that we still will have a lot of vehicles that will require fuel, our heavy equipment, loaders, sidewalk machines, not to mention the fire department and the ambulance service that we are fueling now. And then that would be something that we would discuss again. As I think some of you remember, we discussed getting an IGA going and actually having those entities help us pay for this. But then that was kind of sidetracked by COVID. So we can certainly revisit all of those issues before we do anything with this project.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that.
I thought that's where we left that.
Yeah, me
Yeah,
Think about
partnerships
everything's
and,
earmarked
Yeah.
because we don't have the exact cost.
Any more questions or comments on any of the rest of these? Council, we feeling good with 11? All right.
Item 11, or 12. Relates to the water department. First one is chemical pump redundancy, and this is backup chemical pump for the town's new corrosion control system. The townwide leak survey we do every, Jeff, is that every 3 years, or do we do that every year? The townwide leak.
Which one?
Townwide.
The leak survey is a third of town every year, so we get all the way through town every 3 years with leak survey.
And then the treatment plant instrument updates, upgraded instrumentation to monitor the town's water quality. The Water Smart implementation is gives the ability to homeowners to monitor their water consumption in real time. The Aspen Drive main replacement that has frozen many times in the past years, and this would allow the water service to be uninterrupted. Started the TAP efficiency program. I think you're aware of that. This continues that program to incentivize property owners to install certified water and efficient fixtures. Meter reading technology, we've had the same technology for the last 10 years, and asking for an upgrade for 2,000 doesn't sound like very much after all these other big numbers we've been looking at. Slow the flow program, I think you're also familiar with that for 10,000. And that's all for the water department request.
We're sitting on a really good fund balance on the water fund. Should we be looking at something else? What are we holding back for? Is there an upgrade that is under consideration?
I can answer that question. We have
Paid by Lake Hill.
water mains that, we will have water mains that need to be replaced down the road in the high groundwater areas, and we'll be working on that. It's also very wise to have a robust fund balance in the water fund, because anything that breaks in the water system, unfortunately, is always a very expensive repair. And it's nice to have that insurance policy, if you will. One water main break can cost up to $60,000, $70,000 to replace, depending on what the issue is. So yeah, it's always good to sit on a robust fund balance for the water system. So yeah, there's projects coming up in the future, and then there's always the unforeseen that we have to plan for.
And as part of your 5-year, I believe I sent you, let's see, I think I sent that to you. Yes, in all the detail that was sent to you electronically. If you look in the water fund, there is a 5-year capital plan.
Okay.
And it does show, so the fund balance drops down to, in 2023, actually drops down to about $1 million. So there's not a lot of money in there.
Probably be asking, why is our fund so low? So,
Being fiscally irresponsible.
Jeff, is there any, where are we? Is well 7 kind of, is that some of just the unplanned contingencies we're at with well 7 right now, and just being ready to take anything on there? Or where do we stand? Because we addressed some of the lead stuff, right? We funded the lead.
Yep.
Chemical.
Yeah, now the the next thing coming forward may be the PFAS in well 7. But, there's no definitive answer on that yet, and the numbers we're getting straight out of well 7 still do not violate what could be the MCL from the EPA for that pollutant. So, but, we do need to make sure we keep money in there. If you remember, well 7 was designed to have treatment added to it because of the EDB problem we had, but now that's gone actually, which is good news. So yeah, those are all the things that we have to keep in mind as we move forward. And not to mention, we're gonna have some out-of-pocket expenses for Lake Hill possibly, if that goes forward. Depending on the participation between the county and the town on that project.
Thank you. Everybody good with 12? All right.
Okay, 12, this should be, I have 2 12s in here.
Yeah.
It's
Second
really
one,
just a draft, you know.
The 2 budget highlights. You really wanted to highlight a lot of stuff this year, buddy.
Budget highlights, again, these are things that you have
Mhm.
seen in the past for recreation and cultural events, all coming out of the lodging tax fund. And then the real number 12 or number 13 all has to do with the marina.
Mhm.
And we made significant changes to these requests as they were originally presented to you.
Yeah.
We have 150,000 for the Island Grill site work. We cut that from 1.5 million and phased that, so
Yeah.
that's 750 now. Remaining in is to replace the anchor winch boat. And then fishing boat motors, 10,000. We reduced the original ask for the Dock Island, 200,000. We'd like to leave that in there because there might be undetermined equipment and supplies that are requested that we need to accommodate our
Yeah.
boat owners.
We know at the minimum, we probably want to add 100 mooring balls, so people on the docks and the water falls precipitously during the summer, they can move out to moorings. A lot cheaper than Dock Island.
Next two are replacements for the paddle sport boats and to replace some of the pontoon fleet motors from Evinrude to Yamaha.
Any of those?
This, we're short the 1,246,000 for that. Is that we needing
No,
to
that's
get?
been revised.
Okay.
That, with those cuts at the end of 2022, the fund balance would be 230,000.
Yeah, we cut out
Thank you.
$1,150,000.
I got you. I just read that. Yeah.
Other questions, thoughts, concerns? Andy's got the placemat out. He's looking for something.
It makes it easy that we're in such good shape.
Part of the budget named after him, so he's leaving happy.
The only thing I'll go there, and I'm willing to do that, is I know when we did our one-on-ones, we had money in for the promenade, and I think without having an actual all-council discussion and review and community input, I think it's pretty premature to cut that from a budget without hearing council's thoughts and community feedback. And I'd personally request that we put that back in. Doesn't mean we have to spend it, but I would rather have that ability and then do a budget amendment later on after we discuss it. That would be my request to council. I've heard nothing but positive thoughts across the board, except for the 2 people who've been upset about it for the past 2 years. And I think we need to honor that and at least have the discussion, even if it's the majority of council's initial take is to not do it again. I think we need, in our clarity and conversation goals with the community, bring that back up and have that as a conversation. So I think having the budget line would be good, and then we can always axe it, and then we get that money back. But that would be my only thing that I saw missing.
So for you, I thought the number was big, but I didn't realize that it was a determination.
I did think the number was a bit big as well.
But I think we owe it to the concept
But
to have a conversation about it for sure.
Council's in support of that, then we would schedule a work session. I think originally we had it scheduled for sometime in October. We put that back on the books.
Yeah, I don't, my overall thoughts about the promenade haven't changed. I appreciate it. It's very popular and I would certainly acknowledge that and honor that. That number is a big number to create that experience. And without a real need to do it, it really is just I think a real accommodation, and it's not a necessary one. So, so I would support putting it back in, but if you all do, then that's fine. But I would want to know the real number on that. And I think, the problem I've had, I know there's gonna be time for this conversation later, I think can be addressed in terms of equity, and then that would change a little bit. But for now, a number that big to do that, I don't support at any level. But
what was it, 200, correct?
250.
250.
And again, that was an estimate. We haven't done the detailed analysis, but the type of improvements we're considering would be permanent ones, and they're not inexpensive, hydraulic bollards, remove plastic Jersey barriers and put in, permanent improvements that are commensurate with the quality of the community. I mean,
Just a hemisphere number. What was the cost to do it the way we did it this year?
like was that? Yeah, well, I just had talked to them about that the other day. Give me a number. Yeah. Do you have an estimate, Jeff, on what it costs just to put up this temporary promenade?
Over the past 2 years,
Mhm.
with materials, parklets, barrels, lighting, I want to say it's in the neighborhood of close to $100,000 more, of course, spent the first year than on the second year.
Sure.
The second year, a lot of the expense was the additional flower barrels that we created and then the flowers that we put in them. So that was the bulk of the expense this year. But we still have all that stuff. We're saving it, we're storing it, and it'll be able to be deployed and used anytime in the future.
Biggest potential would be bollards, either recessing into the ground, but Jeff has noted that we have a lot of areas with high water tables, so that wouldn't work, so they'd probably be the breakaway type, but they're still not cheap.
Just throw a number at it.
Well, I was gonna say, are you guys good if we put 75,000 in there for conversation's sake until we can discuss
I
with it?
think we need more than that. Let's say.
Well, I think the big thing is, I don't know if we'd be looking at anything permanent, so it'd be continuing some of the things they've done.
On temporary types of, yeah, that would be more than fine then.
I'm also still in the same position where I feel the inequity. I don't know that we can make up the difference. And I think this was a COVID thing. And if this is not going to be a COVID thing, then it's got to be a completely different conversation. And we've got a lot of other things to talk about along with it, such as infrastructure. If we're going to talk about doing this thing permanently, I think there's a lot to go into it. So I don't even know that, I don't know that anything needs to be in there for that personally.
No, that's why we're here.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
So yeah, you have other council members not here.
I'd like to put something in which forces us to have the harder conversation.
Which is,
And I think it's almost inappropriate to make the decision about the promenade next year now. So if we just put in, the number almost doesn't matter, 50, 75,000. And then we know that we're going to have the conversation.
Okay.
Fair enough.
good with that?
We'll schedule in the next month, a work session item to talk about just a promenade.
Well, and maybe later than that, because I probably don't want to stack too much of we can figure out agenda.
Yeah,
time, but
we'll
we have
figure it
time
out.
with
Okay,
And that might not give everybody who wants to weigh in, time to. So, anything else people saw they're missing or council concerns or didn't get addressed?
It's gonna take two people to fill your shoes, so
That's exactly.
thank you, thank you for getting us here all by and it's not all by yourself, I understand.
No, definitely it's not all by myself. I have so much help from all these people, every single one of them.
The architect.
You're welcome to sit in the gallery next year too.
You know, keep doing Zoom
Should-
meetings.
yeah,
and I can
yeah,
join us
yeah.
Anywhere.
Should do from North
I
Myrtle
can, yeah,
Beach.
I can take a, picture on the beach.
Yeah,
and that's it,
exactly.
and when snow is flying here.
If I could. Just.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe we can define our asks from, whatever federal avenues there are as it applies to our strategic plan. So maybe we have, each section has an ask. Sure. With X, Y, and Z in it. Yeah. Right? Just to help us craft this document.
Great idea.
We need that correlation from the budget when we're finished, and then it's behind the policy questions if you look at last year's budget. But that's a good suggestion, actually.
Yeah.
A lot of
it's
them
just that-
apply to so many, it's difficult to do that sometimes because they meet numerous
Absolutely.
goals.
And as they should,
Yeah.
and so they would go
Right.
on the list underneath each one of them or whatever. But just in order to be able to, bring these ideas together on paper, in order to know what our ask is gonna be. And really, the main thing is like, we're basically a few million short from what we really want to do. Sure. So, I think we really need to define what those multi-millions are and what we need.
That's good. Monitor and measure our results when it comes to the federal obvious.
Yeah.
You made a big investment, we need a big return.
Bonnie, can you just remind me, because it's probably a small brain and lots of big numbers. Did I miss where we do like the community grants? Was that called out? Like the $5,000?
But they-
65?
a dollar, there's about, I think about 80,000 this year in there. Part of it's in the nicotine tax fund, if you recall.
Okay, so I just missed, that was where those, all
It
right.
is in the reserve. There's money in there, but we haven't made the determination of who those grants go to.
Okay.
I think you were gonna have that in a later conversation.
Small brain, big numbers, thank you. Anything else? Thought this was very productive. Thanks everyone for your time. Greatly appreciate it. I know it's a lot of work and not fun, but not terribly late. So have a good night and
Good job.
thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Go forth and spend.
We have to approve it first. I know, we're not even done yet. Because otherwise we would have made a much bigger deal about Bonnie's last budget, but we're not there yet. She still has time for a little bit of.
One more meeting out of her.